Hello and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Spirited Art Studio live stream on Facebook. The Spirited Art Studio, for those of you who are joining for the first time, is a community-based art studio that has typically gathered in the lower level of Robertson Wesley United Church. And my name is Laura, and I am the facilitator of this. And but now that we have had to close the church and do the social distancing and the self-isolating that has been required of us during this pandemic, we have found this to be the best solution to keep our community-based art studio open to the public, so that anybody who is online on Facebook can check us out and see what's happening, see what this is all about. When we are gathered in the actual physical studio rather than this virtual studio, we're gathering together to create art together. Many people bring their own art projects that they are working on at home, and to be connected with other artists and share their ideas. So we build community through sharing creativity together, and this is where we find friendships. And so I think we're managing to maintain some of our community together as we've gone online, and as people find us and make comments and say hello when they see us online. So again, welcome, and I'm glad you're here today. So this afternoon I'm continuing on with a multimedia project on canvas, and this is one that I began on Monday night with I did this background in a analogous color scheme, which it means basically one hue or one color, and the variety in the color is tints and tones of this one hue. So the hue is the pure color in itself, and then the darker tones, such as the wine colors, are added in by adding black, and the lighter sort of pinky tones are added with tinted with white, and that's what creates the tints. So tinting and toning of one hue creates the various colors of an analogous color scheme. So along with that, I've added the idea of the butterfly and of juxtaposition by putting a photo of myself dancing just for fun with the butterfly wings. So in reflection on this multimedia project later, I kind of decided that I'd rather see just wings on the one side of me and not the other side, because of the way that I am turned in the photo of me. It would, I think, look better if the wings were coming from behind as though I was in flight, sort of like butterflies you see when they're fluttering along and they're not just lying flat in the flowers. So I'm going to demonstrate how, when you change your mind with some kind of project you're working on, the great thing about working with acrylics is you can easily paint over top of what you already have with your colors and recreate the background again. So that's what I'm going to do with this. I'm also going to add some stenciling, and so I'm just going to be talking about that and demonstrating that as well. And so yeah, and I'm going to be talking about why I like butterflies and why I've chosen this subject matter, and the word that I'm going to add to it, which is the word morph. And it's about spirituality and spiritual awakening and transformation, and having a little bit of discussion about that from different authors that I like about spirituality and the spiritual journey. And so yeah, we'll see how things go as I work through this different subject matter. So welcome and thanks again. I'm going to begin by just working again on achieving the colors that I have in this background, to go over top of this wing that I've chosen to no longer be in the project. I've just chosen to kind of delete it. I've opted to have only just this one wing, to just emphasize that I have my wings behind me, and I'm in flight, I guess, just for fun. So I'm going to start with this magenta color that is the base color of this background in the painting. So this is the easy part, basically, and I'm just going to cover up what I no longer prefer to have in the painting, by just painting this on solid, just this one color. I'm not going to add any gel medium as I did before, because that could give it a sort of a translucency, but I want it to be very opaque so that it covers up this wing that I've chosen to no longer have in the painting. So just gonna start painting this color right on, and it looks like the black is coming through. Even though I'm choosing this very opaque paint. So I think that means it's going to take a few coats of paint to create the covering up of this wing. And it's going to have to be fairly thick. I'm just going to add a little more right now. And please, if you're watching, please say hello and let me know you're here. and I will check in once in a while and say hello back. So I don't know if you can hear the birds chirping in the background. It's a beautiful sunny day today, and I'm really happy about that. I've been out on my deck enjoying the warmth of the sunshine. I hope you have too, and I want to get outside and walk in nature and enjoy all the greenery that is happening because of our sunshine and the rain that is both happening. So it's beginning to cover up a little better now. I can certainly understand if some of my art studio participants and artists that have been joining me regularly are not here today, that you're out enjoying some gardening or some other activity in this beautiful weather we're having. Especially after some of the colder weather that we were having earlier this week. So, as you can see, that is beginning to disappear, and I'm going to let that first couple coats of this solid magenta color dry, and then I'll be probably adding one more coat of this solid hue of magenta before I then add some tints and tones to sort of match the variety of colors that are in the background so that it blends in with the background. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm just going to add some stenciling, and I'm just going to show you what I mean by that. I have these butterfly stencils, and I also have this lettering stencil, and so I'm going to use both of these in my on my canvas, and so I'm going to show you how I do this stenciling. I have this sponge brush that I use specifically for stenciling because it has a nice flat end on it, and if you touch the surface very flat like this, then you can get a nice even transfer onto the canvas through the stencil. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to choose black, like the black in this wing here, and these butterflies are a smaller scale, but they will just kind of add to the idea of a butterfly theme that I have on this canvas. So I'm just going to find my black, and of course this is just something the subject matter is really arbitrary, something I've chosen because it just happens to be a subject matter that I enjoy, as it is represents the season that I love, the season of spring, and how everything becomes new in the springtime. Everything comes to life, new life, and butterflies are a big part of this season. So it also to me is a symbol of spirituality and spiritual awakening and transformation, and I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later on in this session. So this is a basic, very basic stencil that you can probably get at any craft store or art store, or you might even find it in a section, art store in the art section in the dollar store, or even at Staples that has some art supplies. So it's always good to look around when you happen to be in any of these stores and see what art materials are available. You can also always order online, just as we are ordering so much online. Even our groceries are being ordered online right now. So I think I'm going to, I like this butterfly with the profile, with the wings behind the body, and this is kind of what I'm trying to portray here now that I've eliminated this wing that is in front of my body. Just have this idea that I'm in flight, sort of just a fantasy kind of idea, and so I'm just going to emphasize that by putting this butterfly up in this corner. So I've just put a blob of black paint on this palette, my plastic lid palette, and I'm just pressing down on it flat so that I can get enough paint on the sponge brush to do a stencil. And I'm also going to just use this paper that I have on my table just to practice run, just to see how the stencil is coming through and if I like it, the way it looks. So I'm just glancing at it, and I like it. I think it'll work nicely because the black comes through just as it does on the wing of this butterfly that I collaged on, and so I think it'll have a nice coordination with this main subject, and it will sort of tie into the theme. So I'm going to just lie the stencil down on the surface. And it's important to just lie it really flat, and you want to have it sitting in place so that it won't move, so that you get a nice transfer, and then you just pressing down firmly with the sponge brush through the transfer of the stencil till you have an idea that the stencil has come through and worked in your favor. So that is my stencil, and I see that I got a little bit of the stencil on the edge of this and that I didn't want, so I'm going to probably cover that up when I go back into my working in my background. So that is the first butterfly that I've stenciled on, and I think I'm going to do a couple more just to balance out the composition a bit. So before I do that, I am going to add another coat of paint. As I begin to cover up this other side that I've chosen to take out of the painting. So I soaked the brush so it wouldn't dry out. So now I'm just drying it off. I'm not too worried about it being perfectly clean because I'm going to continue on with the same color. So I'm adding more of this magenta color that I have. And this is in part because I think it'll have a bit more of an effect that I want, because I have a wing only on one side of me as I look like I'm in movement and I'm dancing, but also just because thought it would be interesting to demonstrate how you can make a change to a project or a painting when you've changed your mind about something. So I'm just going to see who's checking in. Hi, yeah, please feel free to say hello so I know you're here. See, there are 3 of you. Thank you for being here. Right now, okay, I just blotted out that black that was up here that I didn't like. And now I'm adding paint to this area. Just straight paint, making it very opaque as I work to achieve my goal, which is to cover up this wing that is on this side of the figure, because I want to have the effect of having the wings behind the figure as the figure is moving around in space. So, adding this very opaque hue or color. It's a color in its purest form, which is the hue, because I haven't added any other pigment to it. But eventually I'm going to add other colors so that I can match the area around it with the tints and tones that are coming through, to give it achieve a sort of a floral background, a very up close looking floral background, so that it's to scale of the tiny wings of a butterfly. And of course, not human scale, and that is the interesting juxtaposition that I'm looking to achieve by having a human scale portrait of myself juxtapositioned with the butterfly wings to give the impression that I am the size of a butterfly and I have my wings, my own set of wings. So it's beginning to blend well back into the background so that you can barely see that this wing was there, like this one. Okay, so hopefully that gives you the idea of what I'm trying to achieve there. And so I'm going to put this brush back in the water to soak. And I'm going to do some more stenciling while I allow this to dry. And I'm choosing areas that are already dry on the surface, so I'll probably put another butterfly like this one on this area. So I'll probably choose maybe this one, but I won't have the legs there, so that you can have the just the look of another butterfly, but not as though it's perching, but as though it's in flight. And then I'm going to add a butterfly that does have both its wings showing, and just put it in this corner. And I think that is all that I will stencil on for butterflies. I also have this alphabet, and I am planning to put a word along the side here that is related to this butterfly theme, and it's the word morph. I'm not sure if you remember, or if you're have ever heard of the Power Rangers, who say, "We shall morph indeed." So they transform and they have superpowers, and this was really fun for young children to watch. So I like how that word can be used in the sense of spirituality and spiritual transformation and metamorphosis. So I'm choosing to put the word morph right along the side of my canvas here. And I'm going to stick with the theme of using black, as I have for my arms and my legs, my wings, and the other butterflies that I'm going to be stenciling on, just to stick with the theme and allow things to blend and coordinate together. So just to give you an idea of my thoughts as I'm creating this multimedia canvas. So you could do similar things using your imagination and putting other things together, such as a crowd of people, maybe in a field of dandelions, or something that would be so the people would be the same height as the wildflowers, or you could maybe put have fun with working on the project with children and your family, and you could put cut your heads out of photographs and put them on images of your favorite animals in nature, and just sort of have fun with putting things together that are just fun and imaginative, and things that obviously don't otherwise go together. So I'm just going to continue on with this, and I'm going to add some black, more black to my palette. And this time I'm going to use this stencil. And add some paint to my stenciling sponge brush. And then just gently dabbing it on flat, taking care to not smudge it and not to put too much paint on it, so that hopefully the shape of the stencil comes through and looks like a butterfly. So I'm just going to hold it in place as I take a sneak peek, and looks like I achieved what I wanted. So I'm just going to pull the stencil off. So that is one more. I got a little bit of the legs in the stencil, so I think I'm going to use my magenta color again to blot it out afterwards once it's dry. And in the meantime, I'm going to add the other last stenciled butterfly in the other corner. So putting lots of paint, I think even adding more paint to my palette here. So that I know I have enough paint on my stencil sponge brush. Okay. So, yeah, adding it right here in this corner. Just finding a spot where I can hold it fairly steady in this spot, because I don't want it to be moving on us while we're stenciling. I want to have a secure hold of it, and then just stamp through the stencil, being sure that you're just keeping it very flat so that you're not smudging it. Okay, so that is the third butterfly, and those are the butterflies that I've decided are enough. And I may add a glaze to the wings, as I've done with this main wing on this large image, just to have it coordinate and blend in. So I'll be doing that, and again I will also blot out some of the areas that came through on the stencil that I didn't want to see on the stencil. So I hope you're hearing me okay, and those of you who are watching, and thanks for watching. And I'm going to now begin with the word over here, morph. And I'm going to stick with the black. And I'm thinking I'm not going to go too far down into this area with my stenciling until I've gone through and blended it in with the background a little more, so that it has the tinting and toning and gets the effect that I want to achieve, in order for it to no longer look obvious that this area was changed, so that the wing is no longer visible. So I'm just going to start with this M of the word morph in this upper corner, and this kind of gives me the framework for the words that I want to go. The letters going straight down on the canvas, beginning with M-O-R-P-H. So it looks like these 5 letters will work well going up and down across this edge. So putting this first letter here kind of sets it in place and sets in place the spacing for the other letters that I will add in later. So that is the letter M that I've started with. And eventually I will add the other lettering so that to work my way down so that I have the word there, morph. Going with the theme of morphing, we shall morph indeed. So that is stenciling. That's how to do it with a brush like this, with a flat surface sponge brush and acrylic paint. It's how to do it and how not to do it, because I did get a little bit of the edges of other stenciling in the painting as well. But the great thing again about acrylic is that you can go over top of it and make it all new again. So that is what I'm going to do by adding more of my magenta color paint and just blotting out these black areas that I didn't want to see. So before I do that, I think I'm going to do some different blending of this area so that I blend it back in with the background so that it begins to recede into the background and no longer looks so obvious that it was originally the other wing. So I hope this is making sense to those of you who are watching right now and who may tune in and watch later. I know it's a beautiful day out today here in Edmonton, and so I'm guessing that a lot of you may be outside today, and I hope so. I encourage just being outside and enjoying the beauty of nature we have out there, enjoying the ordinary miracles that we see every day, and the simple things in life that can give us joy. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that while I'm waiting for this paint to dry. And because watching paint dry is not the most exciting thing to do, I'm just going to talk about how the symbolizing of a butterfly is a symbol of spirituality that I enjoy, and how creativity can be a spiritual discipline. So I referred to this book on Monday night, Hope for the Flowers, and it's a beautiful book about the butterfly and how it transforms into, first is a caterpillar and it transforms into a butterfly, and it goes through the story of the journey and how the caterpillar is feeling. Of course, it's a sweet little fictional story about two caterpillars and how they go through the whole change and transformation, and really the journey of life, and how one can be resistant to change, and how we can eventually look forward to change and to transformation, and finally make the choice to take a risk to do what is something you don't know, for the sake of what you do know, letting go of what you do know, and risking that for something that is worthwhile. So anyways, I did read some of this story, and I shared some of it on Monday night. So if you're interested in that, you can have a look at Monday night's session. And so I just wanted to refer to a different book. And this one is, this is a little miniature book, but there's also the regular version of this book available, and it's called The Life You've Always Wanted, Spiritual Disciplines for Ordinary People. And it is just a great little book about spiritual disciplines and the spiritual journey and what these things mean. And so there's different chapters, and in the beginning, the first chapter, the author refers to the hope of transformation, and calls this chapter "We Shall Morph Indeed," and refers to the Power Rangers and how that was popular at the time, but how it can be a great metaphor for change of any kind, and specifically spirituality. So you look at spirituality and really a conscious awareness of being spiritual beings in physical bodies. So having that awareness is the beginning of spirituality, the beginning of the transformation. So it could be known as awakening. And it is something that different faiths and religions look at as the beginning of spiritual journey in different ways. So in this book, this is I would say a discipline that the author is looking at, and he breaks it down into different practices, and my favorite chapter is on the practice of celebration, and he calls it the D-Da Day. And I like this little book because it's sort of a condensed version of the book, but I recommend, if you're interested in this topic, I recommend the actual book, with the full text, and it's The Life You've Always Wanted by John Ortberg. So this is the practice of celebration and the spiritual discipline of joy. And he writes that joy is at the heart of the Creator's plan for human beings. The reason for this is worth pondering a while. Joy is at the heart of God. And he ends this chapter, let me find it here, by suggesting taking time and setting it aside, like one day of the week, to just practice celebration. So one day a week, eat foods you love to eat, listen to music that moves your soul, dance, play a sport that is fun, that stretches and challenges you, read books that refresh your spirit, paint, wear clothes that make you happy, and surround yourself with beauty. And as you do these things, give thanks to the source for God's wonderful goodness. Reflect on what a gracious God we have, who gave us these gifts. So that is just some food for thought from this little book. I also have this that I wanted to share today. It's called The Artist's Way, and it has creative prompts, and it's by Julia Camera, The Artist's Way, and these are cards that have creative prompts, and they are for writing specifically, but I think you can take one of these cards and reflect on them as you're doing any kind of creative work. So whether it's painting or any kind of expressive creative art, that whether it's writing or painting or any kind of visual art or movement and dance, or improvising drama. So I took one of the cards out just to give you an example, and I see I have some comments, so I just wanted to say hello. Hi, Shal. Thank you. You have a wonderful day too. So the Artist's Way is a really great set of cards, and it's based on the book by the same name. Again, the author is Julia Cameron. So this one card that I pulled out of this box of cards is, says on it, creative energy on the front of the card. I'll just show it to you closely. You can see it. And on the back of the card, it says, creativity is the natural order of life. Life is energy, pure creative energy. There is an underlying, indwelling, creative force infusing all of life, including ourselves. So I'm just taking another drink of water. When we open ourselves to our creativity, we open ourselves to the Creator's creativity within us and our lives. So I love that, and I love some other writing and a podcast by Elizabeth Gilbert, who is the author of Eat, Pray, Love, who also talks about the Creator's creativity and how we can be collaborators, co-creating with the source of creativity within us. So I just love to imagine that. To me, that is powerful, and that is significant of how our imagination can work with us and be a very wonderful source of spirituality and creativity within us. So that's my food for thought for the day, and I'm just going to go back to working on my project now. So my project is going with this theme of spirituality, of spiritual awakening, spiritual transformation, morphing. We shall morph indeed, metamorphosis of a butterfly from a caterpillar into the cocoon, and then emerging as its new self with wings and becoming its true self, and how it is very symbolic of spiritual transformation. So I've been working on this multimedia canvas, and I chose to use black to put in these stenciling of butterflies, and I'm also going to put along the side here the word morph, just because I love that word. We shall morph indeed, and continue to morph. It's not a one-time event in a spiritual journey. The awakening might be the beginning of the spiritual journey, but it continues on. We continue to morph. So as we become the butterfly and we have this spiritual awakening within us, as we become conscious of the spirit within and that we are spiritual beings, but it continues on. We continue to morph as we continue in our journey. So I am going to have this word morph coming down this one side of my painting, and I'm going to find my sponge I'm going to add a little bit more black to my palette. So that I have enough paint to add to my sponge brush. And I'm going to add the little O. And I'm just thinking of how I want to space these letters out across this vertical. So M-O-R-P-H. So I think if I put this O sort of in this center of this little space here, that should work. And just touching this to see that it's dry so I won't smudge it. And adding this O so it looks centered underneath the M, and holding it firmly in place so that it won't smudge as I stamp through the stencil and make the impression of the O on the canvas. And then holding it, I take a sneak peek and look like it's okay and lift it off. Okay, so I got the O on there, and next I'll be putting the R and the P and the H. I want to space the letters so we can read them as one word coming down this edge of the canvas. So I think, you know, as I look at it now, I'm thinking, well, I could have probably lowered the O a little more so that when I put my next letter in, the 5 letters as they work down and space out evenly will work out. But I think what I'm going to do is, now that I have these 2 letters, I'm going to add the last 2 letters and then space the final letter R in between, especially because this area isn't quite dry yet. And I'm also wanting to add more color and variation of color, tints and tones of the hue, so that it will blend better with the background. So I'm going to add the H at the end of the word morph at the bottom, and just adding more paint to my stamp, finding the letter H on my stencil. And so if I look, I think I put the R about there, the P about here, and I think I'm just going to end with the H out here. And the H has this curvy, same kind of curvy cue that the M has, so I want it to be the same distance away. So I'm just going to make that judgment. Oh, that's my phone. So I'm just going to lift that off now that I have that H there. And my phone has stopped ringing, so that's good. So I'll eventually put the R and the P in morph once I'm finished. And you can see that I have some of the edges of the other letters around the H that got onto the canvas kind of accidentally. But if you look on my canvas closely, you can see there were already some black marks on my canvas that I covered and that was the effect, to look like stargaze or lilies and have a little bit of subtle texture. So I think that having some of these black blotches blending into the background will be taken care of, because it's already happening in the background in some of these areas. So now I'm going to mix up my magenta and tone it down with some black and tint it up with some white, so then I have tints and tones of my magenta, and to continue on blending this area into the background so that it recedes back into the background, since I've changed my mind about having this wing here and chosen to cover it up. So that's using creative license to change your mind about something in your image, and I'm just basically showing how acrylic lends itself well to that. We can cover things up and change and make choices. So, using my magenta, I'm going to add it to this palette. And my brush was soaking that I was using with my magenta here. So I'm just dabbing it on this paper towel so to get the excess water. But I don't need to make sure it's clean, because I'm, again, still using the same color palette. So I'm going to add some of this black from my black palette that I was using for my stenciling, and adding it to some of magenta. And one thing about black is it's very powerful, so you don't need much to tone down a color. So I'm just going to add some more of my magenta. And I'm going to dab off a little bit of my black onto my paper towel so that I have it toned down a little less. And I'm going to just apply this tone to the surface of the canvas. Oh, and I got too much black. So, just demonstrating how things can also go wrong when you are doing demos. So I had too much black. So I'm going to go back to my palette after cleaning and dabbing this brush on the paper towel, and try to remove most of the excess black paint that is on it, and just adding more the magenta hue to it, and adding that back on. So this is a work in progress, and we'll see how well it works. as I'm blending this area back into the background. So I'm using the toning down of the color first. And then I'll be adding the tinting last, and hoping that this will all work to have it blend in and look more like these areas. Okay. So that's got the darker tones in, and now I'm just going to add some more magenta again to another palette. I'm going to soak my brush, clean the darker color out, add some magenta to my palette, and some white to tint the hue. And I always get too much white because it's hard to get it out of that large container. So I think I got the brush cleaned. So I'm just dabbing it into the towel to dry off any excess paint. And I'm just going to add some brushing to my towel just to test and see how, and it looks like my brush is clean. So I was just brushing my brush right onto the paper towel just to check and see that it's clean. So now I'm just going to add some tinting. Right to the canvas. And so now we can see some of that comes up. That looks like some of the other tinting on the canvas. And so it begins to blend. And I'm just running my brush across the edge because there's an edge showing from the collage of the wing that I'm trying to disguise. So I'm working with that. So I'm working on getting some different tones and shades in this area to see if I can somehow blend it in. However, it may not entirely blend in with the background, and so this gives you a good visual of what happens and what you can do, what might work and what might not work. So going back to my tone and adding that back in as well. My toned color, so the magenta that has some black in it. And just dabbing that in again, blending it through. Also taking some time to cover up some of these blacks that I didn't want to have. So dabbing on over top of those. And so they'll still be visible, but that's okay because I already had some blacks that were visible in the background of the painting. And because I'm the artist, I have the artistic license to decide that that's okay, it doesn't matter. It's achieving the effect that I'm wanting. And I'm just going to add some more blending in the background in some different areas, just to continue to blend the background into the foreground, or blend the background in this area to coordinate with the background in the other areas, so it no longer looks like a part of the foreground. So I'm just kind of going back and forth. And also just adding paint over top of these blackened areas. So now, as you can see, I've got a lot of white pigment in those areas. And so I'm going to go back again some more with some magenta. So it's a little bit like blending back and forth with your brush and with different tints and tones of the color until you achieve what you intend to have. In your painting. So I'm just adding some more. And I just thought of this just now, but you could say that this painting is morphing as I work on it. So I'm toning down some of the pinks because I was finding that the tints were too white and too intense. So adding in some darker colors of the hue. Putting back in some of the Pierre hue. So that's just the flat paint right out of the tube. And some of the tints. Now I just have a thin line across the top of my arm that got a real highlight that I just want to darken in. So I'm just using a different tiny brush to go over top of that area. And just blend it back down so that again recedes into the background. So again, working to achieve this idea that I no longer wanted this butterfly wing in my composition. I only wanted this one so that it allows for movement, it allows for space, and for the wing to be just behind the figure and not in the front. So, that is pretty much it, I think, for today. What I will probably do to finish this off is I will finish this word by writing R and P, and I will probably go over the whole painting again with a glaze that has this magenta color in it, which is on this brush. That is the main color of the painting. Just to give a bit of more of a tinge to the overall blacks, to just help them to recede a bit. And also then one more final coating of just a soft gel gloss to just give the whole painting a bit of a shine. And then I will call it finished. And then I just wanted to tell you that in addition to stenciling and collage, we can also add other findings to this multimedia project, like beads and gems and other things in addition to it, that can just give it some extra interest with different forms of materials and findings that you might have. Buttons and sequins and lace and gemstones and anything you might have around the house that you could add to your project. So thank you everybody for joining in and watching this video today, and I hope you have enjoyed watching the creative process and gained some ideas that you can take into your own creative projects. And I look forward to seeing maybe some projects of your own that you could share online on this main page of the Spirited Arts Movement, RWUC, or we also have a private group page where you could share in a more private group setting. Obviously it says private. If you feel that you'd rather share there, or the other possibility that's always available is to email me, and if you want me to share with any of the other participants in our art studio, other artists that you know, I'd be happy to do that as well. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.